In fact, for elliptical Gaussians, there is no need to do MCMC. You can see that by seeing the fact that we cover the Box-Miller method to sample any Gaussian. You can do that in high dimensions as well. And then any elliptical Gaussian can be obtained by isotropic Gaussian using a linear transformation. And the way you do this is that if you have the covariance matrix, or better still, the precision matrix, which is the inverse of the covariance, you apply, like, you essentially do the linear algebra on the isotropic Gaussian to get, results for elliptical Gaussian. The usual, right, so you can also use Cholesky factorization to make it more efficient. The thing to watch out for is in case the elliptical Gaussian is degenerate. For example, if I don't have a ball or a rugby ball, but I have a pizza in 3-dimensional, then sampling from that involves like 0 eigenvalues and so on. It's a bit tricky. Okay, so that's sort of not the answer you're quite looking for. The second part is I would admit that I don't know in general for a distribution that look like elliptical Gaussians. When one dimension is big, the other one is small. Can we still, like, is there a better good MCMC algorithm for tackling that? I don't know the answer. I'll ask around and probably get back to you. My current thinking is that if we know that it's somewhat elliptical, like if the set distribution is not Gaussian, but somehow mis-scaled in the sense that some of the dimension, like it's small in some dimensions, really large in the other dimensions, which makes it hard to do MCMC, we can pre-scale it. But this is a chicken and egg problem again. Because we're only assuming that we can evaluate P of Z. We don't know the distribution we're sampling, whether they are elliptical or not. Okay. So I think that's the best I can say so far. It's a nice question. So now let's talk about would slide sampling work. Let's take it offline. Ella, I guess I don't know at this very moment. Okay. Where's my button for sharing screen again? Okay, here it is. Okay, I'm just gonna share my whole desktop. Okay, assume you're seeing it now. So here is what we ask of you. So basically, people make a small presentation that is not very long, like up to 8 minutes, 4 to 8 minutes. Well, the length constraint is such that if it's under 4 minutes, it probably doesn't have enough content. So this is more of a guidance for you. And over 8 minutes, we don't want people to drone on or cover too much. So this is basically a limit in scope for both students and tutors who grade it. So the expectation is that people make a 4 to 8 minute long video that is very focused on one technical topic, preferably one that you have seen or worked on in your assignment. We feel that's a way of giving people a head start and something concrete to talk about. And also you could think a bit more about the assignment topic. Basically, what other questions or properties of the models being asked can you explore, and how do you explain them succinctly, right? Yeah, so basically here is a semi-random sample of topics that we have touched in assignments and tutorials. And you can choose something else as well. Just make sure that it's limited in breadth and depth. And then you can explain how you solve the assignment question, which should be very concrete. And then we encourage you to think a little bit more beyond the assignment, which will differentiate, I guess, submissions from submissions. That's the rationale of the criteria. By basically asking you to explain the solution, we don't mean going through each individual lines of code. Here, what we're after, given the length constraint of the video, is you can say, well, this is the assignment. Be clear about which assignment or which exact question you're talking about. Here's a problem. Open the video with here's a problem. Also with noting their logistic constraints about beginning of the video, show yourself, show your UID so that we know it's you. People are doing this from all over the world, sending us videos, and so there are some assurances. And then talk about the problem and talk about your key steps. Basically say, for this particular assignment, the key to the solution is to do this, or to realize this mathematical insight and then put it in code, or just this mathematical insight and write it out in a proof, right? And so you can, the mechanics of your presentation. So yes, you can use a PowerPoint, Keynote, or Google Slides presentation because these are common, but you're not, using those are not mandatory. If you like to hand draw and or hand write some equations on a piece of paper and hold it against the camera, that works too, as long as your presentation is logically coherent and clear. And also, we're not looking for using many words, right? So a good presentation should have just as many words as needed to make the point across. Another rule of thumb for a presentation or any scientific communication, whether it's written or oral in this case, is to keep in mind your audience. Yeah, in here we did say your intended audience is a student who took SML a few years ago, but did not get into the topic you covered in detail. Basically, your peers, without assuming they don't fully know the particular problem you're talking about. So there are many software tools for recording yourself. PowerPoint, OBS is an open source package that works well. I tried it myself. Yeah, I believe QuickTime and so on also works. So the reason is that we prefer ones that can record. If you are using a presentation file in a computer that shows both you and the presentation. The reason of that is that it gives your video a human touch, right? Of course, if you're using a webcam with hand-drawn or printed out illustrations, you can just do that, right? So we prefer that instead of just the presentation. Maybe think about whether you yeah, it's a preference. If you just show yourself at the beginning and just do the video, it's a valid video. It will get graded, but I guess we prefer that you like to see the speaker in a sense, right? So okay, you submit it on Gradescope. It will have a text box asking you to briefly describe the topic you chose, and anything you think is worth highlighting, you say, I highlighted this key step in the solution, or I covered this additional material, or maybe I made new hand-drawn illustrations. So this is basically your opportunity to point the grading staff or the course staff to any notable things in your video so that they keep that in mind. And also, we ask you to include your references. Basically, if you have used other people's drawings and figures, make sure to refer to them in this text box. We realize that it's hard to do verbal reference especially when you're lens constrained, but include your references. Otherwise, it's not appropriate academic practice. So your video will be graded by 3 main criteria. One is whether your solution is clear and accurate. The other one is whether the video reflects your underlying understanding. The third one is whether there is anything creative in either the presentation mode, the explanation you gave, for example, if you have good hand-drawn material or good visuals you made on a computer, that scores for creativity. If you have novel technical insights that's outside of the scope of the assignment itself, or even the textbook itself, that's creativity. And if you, for example, made the presentation engaging, such as telling a good joke that made your audience laugh, that's like extra points for creativity. These are just intended as examples. So this creativity is at the discretion of the tutor on how good the creative material is, and also how appropriate it is for the content, right? You can have multiple elements of creativity, and the score is not necessarily scoring on the number of elements, but it's a holistic score. Right, so I would say the expectations of, for example, assignment 1 is people can master the material presented in class and solve some of the questions that are not too difficult. And it seems that overall that the class did well on that, which we're glad to see. The video assignment, on the other hand, it does ask for, I guess, you to start from an assignment. And if you just present the assignment or present, let's say, 2 questions from the assignment, it will not have all the creativity. It likely will not have the the full score, unless there's something really nice with your presentation, right? So I guess the creativity and its material that's above and beyond are intended to essentially differentiate okay presentations, nice presentations, and really great ones. So much so that we also plan to invite a subset of well-made videos to a list of online exhibition for the whole class, right? So since your audience is sort of students in the class, we intend to showcase the ones that are really well made. So people may be wondering that, okay, so where do I start and how do I choose topics? So I would say rule of thumb for a technical presentation of that don't intend to essentially teach each single mechanical detail about your approach, but to highlight the conceptual differences, is that in roughly, I would say, average of 1 minute, anywhere between 30 seconds to a minute and a half, you can cover one technical insight. You can string your presentation by structuring it there's an introduction section where you show yourself and tell the audience what questions you're addressing, what your overall plan is. Just as, for example, for each of the lecture workshop, there is a roadmap. You can talk about that, what the video is about, what the roadmap is. That will take you probably, say, a minute or so, right? And then you can plan your presentation by saying, I'm going to cover this next insight. And the time to do that is roughly, say, a minute or a minute and a half. And then what will be the next insight? And what will be the next insight? I would say for a presentation, and then maybe you give an example of the insight or give some example applications and show the key derivation. I would say, in general, any equations or derivations in machine learning will slow your presentation down. They may need like 2 minutes and 3 minutes if you, depending on the complexity of things. So add them up. I would say don't, and also when you present, pace your presentation, have pauses in your speech, look at the camera, smile, engage your audience. So instead of, let's say, presenting 6 things back to back, maybe sub-select and present maybe 3 or 4 things that are key, and present them well, as we going back to the creativity and what you say, what your visual material is or physical material is. You can include like physical objects in your presentation too. So so that's what I have to say. Is there any questions? No? People are happy? Okay, it's 11:49. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Stop the recording for my monologue. To give people a minute to ask questions if there's any.